It's a ritual for pretty much all of us, right? You climb into bed, you plug in your phone, and you pop it right there on the nightstand. I mean, it's our alarm clock, it's how we stay connected, but while it's sitting there charging all night long, just a few inches from our head, is it doing a little more than just charging its battery? Let's dig in and find out.
So that's the big question we're digging into in this explainer. It seems simple, but it's one a lot of us have on our minds. What are the real risks of this nightly habit? To get to the bottom of it, we're going to have to follow the evidence, starting with the invisible energy fields, then to our own biology, and finally to the money and politics that kind of shape what we're told is safe.
So first up, let's get into the physics of it. What is actually coming off your phone while you're asleep? Well, it's not just one thing. The invisible fields it's giving off change, and they change a lot depending on whether it's just sitting there on standby, plugged in with a good old-fashioned wire, or sitting on one of those wireless charging pads.
Okay, so check this out, because this is where it gets really interesting. A phone just on standby. It sends out these little, brief radio frequency pulses to check for a signal, no big deal. But the moment you plug it in with a wire, you introduce a totally different kind of field, a localized, low-frequency magnetic field from the charger itself. And then, you've got wireless charging. That creates an even stronger magnetic field that has to literally jump through the air to your phone. The key takeaway here? They are absolutely not all the same.
And this number, this is where wireless charging gets kind of sketchy. If you put your phone down on that charging pad just a little bit off center, and let's be honest, who doesn't do that in the dark, studies have found that the leakage of that magnetic field can jump by a factor of almost 1.4. That's not a small jump. That's a huge spike in emissions, and it's happening all night, just inches from your head.
Okay, so we've got these invisible fields, but the big question is, so what? Do they actually do anything to us, especially when we're in that vulnerable state of sleep? Let's pivot from the physics and look at the biological evidence. This is where the story really starts to build. You know, for years, the industry line has always been the same. The only way your phone's radiation can possibly hurt you is if it physically heats up your tissue, kind of like a super low-power microwave. But here's the thing. A massive body of independent science tells a very different story. The real concern isn't about heat. It's about these non-thermal effects, really subtle biological disruptions that are happening at a much lower level.
And the key concept to understand all of this is something called oxidative stress. The easiest way to think about it is like cellular rust. See, your body is in this constant balancing act, dealing with damaging little molecules called free radicals by using its own antioxidant defenses. But certain things from our environment can just throw that whole system out of balance.
And here's the chain reaction that researchers are talking about when it comes to EMF exposure. Step 1. The fields mess with your mitochondria. Those are the tiny power plants inside every one of your cells. Step 2. These damaged power plants start leaking toxic exhaust, these free radicals. Step 3. At the exact same time, the EMFs are weakening your body's own cleanup crew, the antioxidants that would normally handle this mess. And the end result? Well, these out-of-control free radicals can start attacking your cells and even your DNA.
And it doesn't just stop at the cellular level either. Studies that hook people up to EEGs have literally seen that radio frequency exposure changes our brainwave patterns while we sleep. And those magnetic fields we talked about from the charger, they can actually interfere with your brain's pineal gland, causing it to produce less melatonin. And that's a huge deal, because melatonin isn't just the sleep hormone, it's also one of the most powerful antioxidants your body has.
Okay, so if all this biological evidence exists, from the cellular level all the way up to our brain waves, you have to be asking yourself, why is this even a debate? Well, this is where the story gets complicated. And to really get it, you've got to follow the money.
This right here, this is what's known as the funding effect, and honestly, it is jaw-dropping. A huge analysis looked at over 300 studies on this very topic. And look at this. When the telecom industry paid for the research, almost 3/4 of the time, the study found no harm. But look what happens when the funding is independent. The results completely flip on their head. Now, 2/3 of the studies find a biological effect. That is a massive systemic bias.
And this quote just nails the strategy. Public health experts have compared it directly to the old tobacco industry playbook, plain and simple. The goal isn't to prove that the products are safe. The goal is to manufacture doubt. You fund your own studies that find nothing, you attack the independent science, and you create this public perception that the science is unsettled. That confusion stalls any new safety regulations.
And if you want a perfect example of this in action, look no further than this. The U.S. government's own National Toxicology Program, so zero industry funding, ran a massive $25 million study.
And its conclusion was about as direct as it gets. Clear evidence linking this radiation to the exact same types of tumors that other studies have found in heavy cell phone users. And what happened? The second these definitive results came out, the study was immediately attacked by industry-aligned critics.
So what you have is this huge split both in the science and in the funding. And not surprisingly, it's led to a major divide in how governments around the world are handling this. The United States has decided to go down one path, but a lot of other developed countries are taking a very different and much more cautious approach.
And a huge part of this difference comes down to something that sounds boring, but is actually critical: how they test for safety. The FCC in the US, well, it's still using a safety standard from 1996. It's based on a 200-pound soldier from the 80s, and they test the phone held away from the body. Then you have France, who said, wait a minute, that's not how people use phones, after they found that most phones failed safety limits when tested right up against the skin. So now they're demanding tests be done at 0 millimeters, direct contact, to reflect how we actually use our phones.
And that different approach to testing? You can see it right here in the official public advice. In the US, you'll find no official warnings about this. But look elsewhere. France tells people to keep phones away from their bodies. The UK is issuing serious warnings about fire hazards, and Germany just comes right out and says it. You should charge your phone outside of the bedroom.
And that fire risk the UK is talking about, that's a whole other layer to this, and it has nothing to do with radiation, but everything to do with heat. When you charge a phone on an insulating surface like your bed or under your pillow, the heat from charging has nowhere to go. This can kick off a dangerous chemical reaction inside the battery called thermal runaway. It's this feedback loop where it just gets hotter and hotter until, it can literally catch fire or even explode.
All right, so we've gone through the physics, the biology, the politics. What's the bottom line here? What do we actually do about it? Well, the good news is that protecting yourself is actually incredibly simple. You really don't have to give up your tech at all.
Look, the steps are super simple, and they're all backed by the evidence we just talked about. Best bet? Just charge your phone in another room. The kitchen, the living room, anywhere but your bedroom. But if you absolutely have to have it in there for an alarm, keep it at least a meter, or about 3 feet, away. And remember what we said about those magnetic fields? Stick with a wired charger over a wireless one to minimize that leakage. To stop all the radio frequency signals, just pop it in airplane mode. And finally, for fire safety, and this one is non-negotiable, never, ever charge it on your bed or under a pillow.
Ultimately, it all boils down to this question, right? Your bedroom is supposed to be a sanctuary, a place for your body to rest and repair. When you look at the evidence for these biological effects, and you add on the very real fire hazard, the science really suggests that bringing a charging phone into that sanctuary is just an unnecessary risk. A few tiny tweaks to your nightly routine could make a world of difference for your health in the long run.